Good afternoon. It's Alex here from the Institute of Child Protection Studies. How are you?
I'm good, thanks, Alex.
Good. And sorry, what's your name?
So my name's Carolyn Jackson-Greaves.
Okay, and what position do you have, Caroline?
So I work in the adoptions and permanent care unit in the department. That's in a very brief way to say it. It's got a very long name.
Yeah.
So I'm in the assessment and support unit, but in the adoptions team in the
Right.
Community Services Directorate.
Right. That is a mouthful.
It is, exactly.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the reason that I'm interviewing you today, Caroline, is that you did the Keeping Kids Central training run by the Institute of Child Protection Studies with me, and it probably would have been last year sometime.
Yes, I was trying to remember. I think it's late, maybe December, November, December.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
last year. Last
Feels
year.
like a long time ago.
It does, doesn't it, with everything that's happened with COVID. I was saying my daughter, who, in my fourth grade, she said to me the other day, "It's been a really long year, mummy." And I was like, "It has, it
It
has."
really
And
has.
for a child to think it's been a long year, I think that
Yeah,
really says something.
that's
Absolutely. Yeah.
true.
So how did completing the KKC training influence your day-to-day practice with children and young people that you work with?
Well, firstly, I'd forgotten we actually had the folder already there, the Keeping Kids Central folder.
Yep.
Um, so that reminded me, actually, we already have those resources. Why aren't we using them?
Mm,
Because we
mm,
hadn't been.
mm.
So, for number one, that was great.
Yep.
And also, it put it into context, I guess,
Mhm.
because I'd looked through the folder and I thought, oh, this looks good, a couple of these activities and a few things,
Mhm.
but I didn't really have the underpinning principles or anything like that.
Yep.
Um, and I was just guessing how to do the activities
Yeah, okay.
as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, it put it into context for me.
Okay, great. All right. And I've heard other people from CSD say that as well, that they've seen the folders, that they've
Oh,
seen the
okay.
resources around the office, but again, like you, they might use the activities, but they didn't have any understanding of the principles and
No.
what was behind it. So coming to the training really gave you a better understanding of that?
Yeah, absolutely. And I could ask questions as well. There's always questions. And I got answers quick. So I could ask you, or I think Sebastian,
Yes.
what ages is this for?
Yep.
And could I adapt this activity for, say, the area I work in?
Mm,
Because what I did find at the training, Alex, and you'll probably remember this,
mm,
is that a lot of the workers were child protection or working day to day with children.
absolutely.
Whereas in adoptions and permanent care, you do these big assessments, but
Mm,
the assessment may only take the actual interviewing a
yes.
couple of days, and I might only see the child once
Yes.
and
Yes.
then, yeah, spend months doing these big assessments for
Okay. But
permanent
what you're
care.
saying is that you could still take that resource with you, if you saw them, if you saw that child once, you would be
Yes.
happy to take some of the activities in the Keeping Kids Central
Yeah,
toolkit with you
absolutely. Yeah,
and
so I could
feel
work out,
comfortable to do them. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
which ones to take. So sorry, what I was trying to say is
Yeah.
I could ask you, is this still okay for me to use in this situation where it's long-term care or
Mm,
permanency? Can I adapt it? So it
mm.
was really helpful to ask those questions and also around ages too,
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
because I remember asking about that.
And
Mm,
I think that's a really key thing, the adaptability of the toolkits and the
mm.
activities is that we say, if it doesn't fit for the child or young person you're working with, you can, change it from being a drawing activity to a cutting out pictures from a magazine activity. You can, put it up on a whiteboard, you can put it on the floor, you can get paints and pencils and you can, involve lots of different things within that so
Or
that you
even
can
change
use.
some of the wording as well to
Yep.
suit.
Yep, or
Yeah,
culturally appropriate as well,
yeah,
and
that's true.
culturally sensitive, so you can change some of, the
Yeah,
pictures or the themes around it and just use those
yeah.
wordings. But also what you said about the age range as well, I think that's really key, in terms of so you felt that you could use it from what age range do you work with?
So we get a lot of babies.
Mhm,
Well, not a lot of babies, I should say. We get some babies
mhm,
and we get a lot of young kids that you sometimes can't do activities with
yep,
in the way that you might otherwise with older children.
yep, yep,
So I think the other thing is that you spoke to us about some other tools
Yes.
that we could use, say, with toddlers.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
So one of the things that I did is when I don't know if this is the next question or not. Um, if it is, let me know. Is I added stuff to our toolkit,
Mm-hmm.
things that we could use with bigger
This.
age range.
Yeah, great, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, so with the littler ones, yeah, we did talk about having toolkits, and adding to those toolkits and having them like in your pod areas or
Yes.
in your groups or on your floors, and then being able to share them amongst the staff that you work with. Yeah,
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 which was great. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
We've just moved buildings actually, and we've taken it with us. A
Fantastic.
lot of things have been chucked and thrown out, but yeah, we have kept the activity box. So
Fantastic, fantastic. And
yeah.
is it an activity box that you can pick up and take with you in the car out to an
Uh,
interview?
so we've got two things. We've got a little backpack that's in the activity box. So the activity box is massive.
Yep.
Um, yeah, and so depending what we want to take that day, we just put it in the backpack and
That's
bring it back.
awesome. That's a great idea. So you've got a bigger kit, and then you
Yeah,
just kind of can pick and choose from the bigger kit and take that out
and I'm
with you.
sure we discussed that at the training. I'm sure that's where we got the ideas from.
We did. We talked
Yeah.
about being able to transfer a child-friendly environment and take that with you
Yes.
rather than it being somewhere where the child has to come to you, because we know that that doesn't happen. We know that child
No,
protection, you're the one who goes out and needs to work with them in their space. So, yeah,
absolutely.
yeah, definitely.
One of the other things I was thinking about how it influences my day-to-day practice, and one of my colleagues said something similar. It just makes you think about the child all the time, the child's voice.
Mm,
Whereas, I mean, we did before,
yeah.
but it's just more prominent, I guess.
Okay, in
Um,
what way? What stood out in the training and that makes you think about the child's voice?
so whenever I'm documenting anything for meetings or for court, or even in our conversations about different um, family situations that might come through, and we might be talking about a permanent arrangement, we always, one of the first things we say is, well, what does the child want? Um,
Fantastic.
how do you think they'll feel in the future? So it's all really focused on the child,
Yep,
you know,
yep,
not,
and
not
hearing the voice of
yeah,
the child.
yes.
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
absolutely. And do you feel that coming back from the training, you were able to share that across your team? Like, sharing it with colleagues and kind of saying, if they were talking to you about one of their cases, putting it back and saying, okay, what about the child's perspective on this? And was that something that you felt that you could share more confidently when you came back from the training?
I think our team were pretty good with that,
Yep,
but I can say with other teams
yep,
within the department and students as
yep,
well
yep.
that we've had through that we've definitely, well, I've definitely, when they've asked me things,
Mm,
talked about that.
yeah, fantastic.
And some of them have asked, what have you done with children? And we've shown them, even though you're in the other unit, you can still
Mm.
use our activity. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Okay. So I guess we've kind of described some of the key strategies or concepts you took away from the training.
Oh, yep. Yep.
Is there anything else you wanted to add to that?
Um, I was going to say some of the activities I found are really useful for drawing out the kids' answers, the
Mm,
children's answers. So,
mm,
because sometimes these conversations can be very tricky,
mm.
particularly around birth family or
Yeah.
not wanting to say they want to live here, or so for me, before the training, I was thinking, oh gosh, this is really tricky. I've been working in this area for so long, but I
You
can't think
have.
of ways to get some honest answers out of the
Mm,
children. So
mm, mm.
um,
And
that's
you
been really
felt,
helpful.
okay, and so you felt that some
Yeah,
of the activities were kind of maybe opened a bit of a door to begin
yeah,
those conversations, to have the tougher conversations, perhaps.
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
they were also fun.
Yeah.
So
Okay. Exactly.
that
Yeah.
made a big difference too, because we come in and we're very serious, asking all these big, serious
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
Um, so I think it's really nice to have that
Yeah, absolutely.
as
And
well.
do you think that it kind of takes the pressure off the child or young person, in your
Oh,
case,
yeah.
the child, you're not, it's not just you and them sitting in a room looking at each other. It's kind of you focusing on an activity together and then starting a bit of a conversation where you're not kind of firing questions off at them.
Yeah, that's right. It just reminds me of one example. A colleague and I went to Sydney
Mm-hmm.
to do a big assessment, and this grandmother had 4 children,
Mm-hmm.
all different ages,
Wow.
and they all wanted to stay together
Yeah.
as part of the assessment.
Yep.
So we actually did quite a few activities with all of them
Mm.
on the table.
Mm.
And I just remember them all, laughing and, mucking
Yeah.
around a bit,
Yeah.
but we
Yeah.
did get some honest answers.
Answers. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but having
Yeah.
all those different activities, we had a few different ones for the different ages,
Yeah.
and
Awesome.
yeah, so that was really good.
And how did you pick those activities? Did you go to that interview having activities in your mind, or did you kind of get there and pick, kind of scope out the children and then pick the activities? How did you do that?
Yeah, good question. Thankfully, I'd spoken to the carer and had already done a little bit of research about the family before we went up there.
Yes.
So I could ask the carer,
Mm.
or the grandmother in this
Mm.
case, a little bit about the children,
Mm.
what their personalities like, or what
Great.
interests they have,
Great.
and
Yeah.
then I could adapt it that way. Also with teenagers, because there was 2 teenagers at that one,
Mm.
I knew it was going to be tricky.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
so for memory, I knew one of them liked to cook.
Yes.
I can't remember exactly what I did, but I had an activity where they could talk about what they like.
I think it's the one that's got
Um,
the pots and pans, the pictures of
oh,
the pots and
yeah,
pans.
it
Yeah.
could have been that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think definitely knowing before you go, for me,
Mm.
I find that really helpful. Otherwise, you might have to take, you're guessing, and you might have to
Yeah.
take quite a few things with you.
With you. Yeah.
I mean, I
Exactly.
guess there's the generic things too,
Mm.
Alex, where you could probably use with a lot of kids,
Yep. Yep.
like the hand one.
Yes. Yep.
I
Yep.
find that, and actually our team uses that one the most.
Okay.
I don't know
Why?
if,
Yeah.
yeah,
Why? Yeah. Could you?
I think it's the easiest,
Mm-hmm.
particularly if you're not prepared, but
Yes.
also, I don't know, there's something about all kids, no matter what ages, seeming to like that activity.
Mm.
But also for permanent care,
Mm.
it can tell us very quickly. It can tell us 5 things that are really quick and easy.
And important to that child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So whether it's
Absolutely.
relationships or
Yeah.
even if it's something like hobbies,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah. 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 It
yeah.
tells you something specifically and unique about that child, which kind of fits with one of our principles from KKC, which is I'm one of a kind.
Oh yes,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah. I was good. This is the next question, so I'll be quiet.
That's all right.
But some of the ones I was thinking about that I used a fair bit, I've written it down so I didn't forget what they were actually called. The talking cards
Yes. Okay. Yep.
is another one
Yep.
that is fun and seems to be universally
Where they finish the
helpful.
sentence or it starts the sentence, or is that the one?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
So that one we've
And how
used
do
a
you
bit.
use that? How do you use that in your practice?
I'm trying to remember what I did with that one.
Mm.
I think, again, just knowing what they're like or their interests,
Yep.
or with
Yep.
the teenagers, asking them to choose one
Yes.
to start with,
Yes.
giving them choice.
Yes.
And that's another thing with these. If something doesn't work when you go, you can offer another one, which is
Yeah.
always good as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So is it
Yeah.
something that you always take out with you when you do an assessment? You always take keeping kids central activity, some form of
Yeah.
activity?
Yeah.
Right.
And we
Okay.
take other ones as well,
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
always, but
Yeah.
sometimes to add
Yeah.
on to it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, definitely. That's our main kit
Yep.
actually is that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And what would you say, and this is not in our questions, but what would you say to newer staff, who are coming into CYPS and may not have seen or used or been to the training yet? Is there something like a takeaway for them, something valuable for them in terms of keeping kids central?
Oh, that's a good question.
And you don't have to give me an answer straight away. Maybe think about it and we can come back to it. But
Yeah.
yeah, for newer staff, what's in it for newer staff, and why would you recommend newer staff to do the training?
Well, first off, for me too, thinking that it's going to save them a lot of hard work and effort in
Because
terms
there's
of,
activities there.
yeah, but also having the principles and understanding why you're doing them and being able to adapt them,
Yeah.
particularly if you were very new, and you hadn't worked in the area before.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd really find it hard to know how to ask questions. And yeah, so I think for them, I would definitely be saying yes.
Mm.
Yeah,
Come
well
to the training.
worthwhile. Yeah.
Alrighty, so moving on to the next question. So what are some of the ways CYPS supports practitioners to be more child-centered and child-focused in their practice? And then we've talked a little bit about it already, but do you have other strategies you use to engage with children and young people? So it's kind of two questions in one there.
Yeah, that's okay. Um, well, one of my own strategies is just doing an activity, a general activity
Mm-hmm.
with a child, whether it's playing soccer or basketball. So they're one of the things, or cards,
Mm,
whatever.
mm,
Doing an activity with a child,
mm.
I think that's really important to build rapport.
Absolutely. Yep.
But also, as you would know, with teenagers or even children that are quite shy or not wanting to open up,
Mm.
is that if you do an activity and talk,
Yeah.
they don't notice.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you get all this valuable information, but yeah, you're not sitting down opposite
No.
each other.
Yeah,
You're doing an
exactly.
activity that they enjoy together, and it's more natural.
Yeah, yeah. We used to
Um,
say you'd have the best conversations in the car drive, wasn't it?
that's right.
Yeah, when it was just you and them, you're not looking at each other, you're looking straight ahead and they just talk and you get so much
Absolutely.
information from them. Yeah.
Mm.
And so what does CYPS, what do they provide in terms of support for you to be more child focused and child centered?
Training.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of our training is child focused.
Mm-hmm.
The Not only will the word be in the title,
Yeah,
but yeah, there's generally a focus on that.
great.
So I think we do it pretty well, much better
Yep.
than we used to.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so the training and obviously letting us go to other training, knowing
Mm.
about this training that we
Mm-hmm.
did,
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that was through them.
Yep. Yep. It is.
Um, yeah, so I think yeah, the regular training. And also the other thing that they do really well is my team leaders and us as a team. I think I mentioned this before.
Mm.
Just generally have discussions about children and their voice.
Yeah.
So, and we often do research as well, particularly with
Mm-hmm.
adoption work,
Mm-hmm.
to say, if this child had a voice,
Mm-hmm.
this might have been the outcome, but this is what actually happened. And so we can rely on some of that.
Yeah, wow, fantastic. So like
Yeah,
reflective practice on previous cases. Yep.
yeah, absolutely. And
Awesome.
looking at all the research as well.
Yep, yep.
So I
Which
think,
helps.
yeah, they've become really good on that.
Mm, mm.
Just thinking from that perspective.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
No, that sounds really good. That sounds like,
yeah,
as a team, if you have time to have reflective practice on hearing the voice of the child and how the child could be more included in future case planning or case management, I think that's excellent. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing, Alex, is a lot of our court reports or a lot of our reporting now has a section in there that asks you to say, have you
Mm,
spoken to this child? What do they actually think? So
mm.
I think that's wonderful.
Absolutely. We've come a long way to get
We
that
have,
into
we
our,
have.
absolutely.
And
That's
in the
awesome.
court, they want to know that too.
Mhm.
So
Absolutely.
yeah, I
Absolutely.
think that's massive.
And as a new worker coming in, that would be quite a difficult concept to come to terms with if you didn't have a lot of that kind of background training around what
Mm,
child focus and child centered means, especially, if they've come from like a social work degree where it's kind of family oriented. Um,
yes, that's true.
and to bring it back to that, making the child the center of the family is a very different way of approaching it sometimes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And is there anything else that you wanted to share with me? You said that at the beginning that you'd spoken to some colleagues in preparation for this interview.
Yes. Yeah.
Was there some things you wanted to share with me from that?
Yeah, one of my colleagues, when I asked her to reflect on the training, and bearing in mind this is over a year ago, so it's not fresh
Yeah,
in her mind,
absolutely.
but she said, I'm just reading it.
Yep.
One thing that stuck with her was really seeing the child,
Mm-hmm.
not just
Okay.
citing them, saying,
Yep.
I've cited this child,
Yes.
and
Yes.
doing
Yes.
the, you know, the
The tick.
process. Yeah, the tick, that's right.
Yeah.
That's really seeing them, really hearing their voice.
No,
So,
that's beautiful. I really like
yeah,
that. Yeah, because there is a massive difference between saying, yes, I saw the child. Yes, they're okay. Yes, they are, this is where they live, etc., etc. But actually seeing and hearing them is very, very different, isn't it?
I was just thinking, Alex, I don't know if this is relevant, but I did a life story, or still doing a life story, on a young woman in her early 20s.
Hmm.
Um, who went into permanent care.
Yep.
And one of the things that she reflected on
Hmm.
to me was that she thought, care and protection were never there. Where were they? And then when I
Mm,
went back on her life story and said, they actually did visit and they did blah, blah,
mm,
blah, she
mm.
said, well, of course I was going to tell them the answer that they, a quick answer. And they were happy with that.
Mm.
She said they never actually, sat me alone or,
Yeah. Ask me.
yeah. So I
Yeah.
was just flabbergasted, not
Mm,
surprised because I know what it has been like, but I also
absolutely.
said to her, we're very lucky now that that is such a major focus and that
Absolutely.
we do that now.
Mm,
Um,
mm.
and
Which is great that
yeah,
we've moved forward, because
oh,
often we feel, we have so many inquiries into child protection and so many reforms, and sometimes, we all kind of, I think, feel that we're not moving forward. But
that's true.
that's a really good example that we
Mm,
have. Um, obviously not for her and for her case, but that's because of her age and where
yes,
the system that she'd been through previously.
that's
But
right.
as you're saying now that it's included as a specific part of your
Mm,
case
as well.
notes and writing it up is awesome.
Um,
Absolutely.
I think, you can't go back in time, but I think that did help to
Mm,
know that things have changed and this is how
absolutely.
we do it now. So at least
Yeah.
she knows that other children
Yeah.
are not going
Absolutely.
to have that same scenario as her.
Yeah. And that kind
Yeah,
of showed us that, child rights have actually become central and a really
yeah,
important part of child protection and what we do. Mm.
absolutely. Obviously, you do the training and
Mm.
then you don't do the training again
Yeah.
unless, you want to go back into,
And do a
and do it
refresher.
again.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I was going to ask, do you have refreshers or have
Mm.
you thought about even sending out something 6 months later or a year later,
Mm.
asking these similar questions or summarizing some stuff or even putting new findings or
Okay. Yep.
I don't know. I mean, it's more work, obviously, but
No, 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 that's really great. That's great feedback. What we're wanting to do, we're looking at kind of a whole new model. We might actually be moving our Keeping Kids Central foundational course, which I'll be looking at developing, onto the open learning platform.
oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and as part of that, we can actually incorporate into the open learning platform a community of practice. So then
Okay.
all the people who do the course could then become a part of that community of practice.
Oh,
And
that's
then we can
fantastic.
re-engage with people each month or whenever, where I could post an article or some
Oh, see,
updated
that's
research
fantastic.
or something like that. So as part of doing this, I would want all the people who have done it in the past to be uploaded and added to that community of
Oh,
practice.
yes, great.
Yeah.
Because as you know, Alex, when you do training,
Yep.
sometimes, depending on the training too, but
Yep.
sometimes you do forget
Yeah.
and you forget to practice it or because
Yeah.
you get so busy.
Yeah.
So I
Absolutely.
think, yeah, something like that would be really helpful.
Yeah, great. No, that's a great
Yeah.
idea because I feel that that's missing as well. I feel that it's kind of the follow up and the support, the ongoing support for you guys. Because
Mm.
I don't know if it was your training or another training, a staff member said that they had been previously when it had been run by a different trainer
Oh, okay.
and that they'd come back this time. And obviously, I was facilitating it. And they said there was so much that they had forgotten
Ah,
and it
yes.
gave them 2 really good days of reflective practice,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
time to go, right, I need to incorporate that into my everyday work again. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The
Yeah.
other thing, I know I'm a chatterbox. The
That's
other
okay.
thing that Lauren was saying too, well, Lauren and I were saying,
Yeah.
this is after the training
Yeah.
actually, and I
Yeah.
remember the two of us having a conversation that um, perhaps you can do training too, that some of it's for very new workers in the field.
Yep.
Did she say this too? And some of it's for more experienced workers.
Yep.
I know it's good to have across too, even if you
Yep.
did one day across, I don't know.
Yep.
But I just think that would be, yeah, really useful.
We have talked about that as well, like almost having a beginners and then a master's class.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So for staff who've perhaps been in the department for over 3 years or something like that,
Yeah,
and have that background and knowledge, and want to be able to have that bigger discussion and a more in-depth discussion,
yes,
um, and also kind of focusing on, managers and program leads and team leaders as well, like mixing it up a little bit more
yes,
so that
yes,
we're
because our
bringing.
supervisors didn't go.
No,
Yeah,
and that's what we've had feedback before,
yeah,
which says that if all the frontline staff come and all the staff who are, doing the grunt work, shall we say, all
mm,
come, but we don't get senior executives or managers or program leads or team leaders to come, then
absolutely.
how do we translate the training back into the workplace and keep that, happening within the workplace?
So
So
true.
we've
Yeah,
talked about that quite a lot. So
oh, good.
um,
Yeah,
that's definitely something that we can look at in the future, and we've talked about that as well. And we do have, like, the online Keeping Kids Central models that we have online at the moment have a domestic and family violence focus.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yes, so you can enroll in that. It's free. You
Okay.
can do the modules yourself, and that
Okay.
is it's more directed to staff who work within a domestic violence shelter
Yeah.
or
Okay.
domestic violence practice who have children in their case management as part of their domestic and family violence work.
Okay. Yep.
Because, as you know, often the focus was on the women, and the children were kind of, they were clients, but they weren't clients in their own right. And what we're saying is that they're actually clients in their own right, and that
I
we need to
see.
have a child-centered and a child-focused approach to them within that domestic and family violence sector. So it's
Oh,
kind of a different
fantastic.
way of looking at it. So
Yeah.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
If you
That
go to
is.
our website, if you go to the ICPS website, or I can send you the link after this, you
Yep.
can go into the Keeping Kids Central Toolkit, and you'll go into each principle, and you'll be able to print off the principle. And then under each of those, you'll also be able to print off the activities. You can print it off in black and white, in color, whatever,
But
or you
wasn't there
can buy
something with
it.
a code though that we had to use?
So that would be if you wanted to do the modules, which I was just talking about, so the
Ah,
Keeping
okay.
Kids Central modules, which are the domestic family violence focused ones. I can enroll you in that course, and
Okay.
it's 7 modules. It doesn't take that long at all. You've got
Okay.
forever to complete it.
Okay.
Um, and there's at the moment, it's not really interactive, and that's something that I'm looking at reviewing to try and make it a little bit more interactive, and also get a community of practice model working within that those modules as well.
Okay.
But
Yep.
at the moment, there's just a quiz, and at the end of it, you would get a certificate of participation to say you've completed that course. So
Oh, okay.
the majority of people who enroll in it are from the domestic and family violence sector,
Yeah.
but we do have child protection workers who do it as well. So, but
Okay.
once we move it to the open learning platform, we might be able to open it up to a bigger um,
Cohort. Yeah.
cohort. And we're also
Okay.
looking at, we have at the moment, it's internal facing ACU course, which is called Child Safe Organisations. And it's an awesome course. And
Okay.
we're also going to look at uploading that to Open Learning so that then it's accessible to our child protection staff, anyone who wants to do it. So that would also
Okay.
become part of, the post-training support where you could go on and do that.
Ah, yes, and do some
Yeah.
extra stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that child safe organisation staff kind of is a little bit of that masterclass stuff, because it opens it up to that, how do you make your whole organisation child safe, not
Yeah.
just the work that you do, and it incorporates the national principles for child
Okay.
safe organisations. And as you'd be aware, all states and territories are now working towards child safe standards,
Yep.
which fall underneath the national principles, and
Okay.
ACT has already started that process.
Ah,
Victoria, so if you ever
all
wanted to have
right.
a look, it's child safe standards.
I
It's
might have
part
a
of
look.
their work.
Yeah.
And
Writing it down.
ACT has started that process as far as I'm aware.
Safe practices. Okay.
Yeah, it's child safe standards. And that came out of, again, that came out of the Royal Commission. So then we had the national principles for child safe organisations, and then underneath that is the child safe standards.
Got you. Yeah.
So
Ah,
organisations are all going to have to be able to tick that off and say, yep, we've got child safe standards incorporated into our organisation. So
oh, fabulous.
yeah. So there's lots happening, but I totally understand what you were saying about, you want to be engaged and you want that follow up. And I'm often saying, I often have articles and research that I read and I go, oh, that's just brilliant. And I've got this whole folder on my, network
Ah,
drive that's full of articles that I'd love to share with you guys. But how
yeah.
do you do that? What's the best way to do that? Because there could be a cohort that wouldn't want to engage with me again, but there might be some who
Yeah.
do. So it's trying to work out how we could develop a community of practice that actually, like, I'd love to come back, 12 months after you do your course and do a refresher.
Mm.
I would love that.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
thank you. Hope that was helpful.
No, that was really helpful. And
Oh,
thank you
good.
for,
Yeah.
because I know it feels quite challenging to be, asked to do an interview, but I hope that you didn't feel too challenged. And
No.
yeah. All right, lovely. I will let you go because it's
Yes.
probably your
Kids will
home.
be home in a minute.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say. Life's going to change in your house in a minute.
Yep.
I'll let you go. All
All
right, lovely.
right.
Take care and I'll speak
Yeah.
soon.
You
See
too.
you. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.